Welcome to stenojunction.com. My name is Ankit, currently working with Government of Rajasthan. This is gonna be 160 words per minute, starting in 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1, go. Sir, the directorates of industries of the states, which are the implementing agencies of the programs of small-scale industries development, are expected to ensure this. Therefore, the center expects the state governments to do something about this. As far as the governments are concerned, they are complacent about this. They are blissfully silent about the possible steps they may take in future, at least to plug the loopholes, to prevent such recurring eventuality. They are not prepared to do that even now. They shift the responsibility or pass on the buck and say that state governments are responsible because the small scale sector is within their purview. That is one stock reply which is often given. So, sir, this is how the multinational companies, big monopoly houses, etc., have come to occupy a place of pivotal importance and accumulated the riches in a very speedy manner by cornering all the benefits legitimately due to small-scale sector. Para. Now, sir, the other day discussion took place in this house about the amounts held in the Swiss banks. How this is happening? A study by the International Monetary Fund has confirmed that deposits in Swiss banks are to the extent of about rupees 1,300 crores. At least 15 to 20 times that money lies in the secret accounts of the Indians in the banks of Hong Kong, USA, and several other places. Sir, it is estimated that the total amount thus comes to about rupees 30,000 crores. This figure is again escalating at the rate of 15 to 20% per year. Last year, foreign trade was of the order of about rupees 3,000 crores. At least 10% of this cost goes towards secret accounts, which covers trade only. There are defense and other contracts also. Therefore, we can very well understand what will happen in that sector also. Instead of the money being made available for this country, it is being kept elsewhere in furtherance of their own interests. It is not available for any national purpose and developmental purpose. Honorable Sir, I want to make a passing reference to the big business entering into small scale sectors and cornering all the incentives, concessions, and exemptions due to small scale sectors. With a view to harness these benefits, large houses have started setting up their own units in the small scale sectors. Para. Prominent monopoly houses and FARA companies have done so and are still doing this. Some of the small-scale sector enterprises are owned by the multinational companies. Small scale units are small because of the limited resources of the entrepreneur. The definition of the small-scale sector, which is so changed as to permit monopoly houses to enter into the small-scale sector. Therefore, what I urge that the minister should give a considered thought to the definition of the small-scale sector, which is giving every scope to the multinationals to enter into small-scale sector and corner all the benefits. The monopoly houses enter the small-scale sector, and several companies numbering 290 are in the small-scale sector because of the lucani in the definition, which is deliberately retained. I use the word deliberately. I'm sorry if I'm wrong. I may be corrected. I will be too happy for that corrections. Large houses enter in the small scale sector by virtue of their large resources, both technical and commercial, places the real small scale manufacturer at a definite disadvantage. He is eliminated. He is being annihilated. The big shark is eating the small fish. There is no turnover ceiling. There is no reference to the character of ownership. There is a constant upward revision of investment ceiling. Para. I give a more glaring example of an electronic company, Western. For instance, it registered itself as a small-scale unit, but the amount it spends on publicity alone must be several times larger than the total investment of most of the small-scale units. I will give one more instance of companies which are subsidiaries to big houses. There is a big list available. The minister himself must be knowing it. The government of India says that the small scale undertakings which are subsidiaries or are owned or controlled by any other undertaking are not eligible for special concessions. Let the minister then identify those industries. The stock reply is, this is a matter within the purview of the state government. This information is not maintained by the center. Let them not come forward with such replies. What I put When I put a question, a reply came that the information was not maintained by the center. This was the reply. Is the government in the dark, or do they want us to be in the dark? In either case, it is not for the country. Government has more than 50% equity. We have private companies where government has more than 50% of equity, and their government has a definite and decisive say. Para. Sir, politics has always been defined as a system under which you determine who gets what, how much, and how. Politics is concerned with the distribution of assets, resources, and goods and services of the society. But politics in our country has been reduced to a game of competitive acquisition. And we politicians perhaps are acquisitive animals. We are always confronting each other in order to get wealth. Very hopefully for our states, for our regions, for our communities, a bigger share of the cake. Some sort of a struggle is essential. Certain degree of competition ought to be there. But when it is carried to a point where we start encroaching upon the legitimate aspirations of another region of our country, then perhaps we give rise to a situation which does not augur well for harmony, to which my friend referred. Sir, we have two ways of looking at the problems that are with us today. One is, of course, to go into contemporary reality. The other is to take a conceptual view, and that what I imagine the Commission has tried to do. What is ought to be, what is the pattern that we should proceed towards. Of course, the real test will always be how we can change from the contemporary reality to that ideal which we are harping on. But the tendency that we find today, whether it is the central government or the state governments, the overall tendency over the last 50 years has been that every political party in our country and every political leader has been speaking in terms of decentralization of power, keeping in view that surrender is the ultimate test. But the actual fact, we must admit that the trend has been towards centralization. More and more power and more functions have gone upwards, even from the level of the local bodies or municipalities. The function that we at one time carried out by panchayats, they have all become concentrated into the hands, what you call bureaucracy, or the district administration, or the state governments. In fact, if I say so, to a large extent, many of those functions have also in effect been concentrated in the hands of the central government. There are ways of doing it. Some are blessed with favors and some are looked at with disfavor. Para. And that creates, to my mind, a situation which I think in the larger national interest we should avoid. So how do we reverse the trend? There is a question. To my mind, we must start with the confession that this trend of 50 years has to be reversed. Gandhiji talked of the Gram Panchayat, and that is why when I think of the central-state relationship, I am not confining myself to just the relations between the center and the state. I think you have to think of the center-state relations in the larger perspective of decentralization of power, when it logically follows that a state government must be prepared to share its power with the district level, and whatever authority we have at the district level, that power should be decentralized to the block level and right down to the Gram Panchayat level. And I was very happy the other day when the Prime Minister did talk about reversing the planning process. That is what we have been arguing for so many years, that economic and social planning of this country must not be carried out in the ivory towers of Delhi. It must begin from the grassroots level. A combination of panchayat plan must give us a district plans. A combination of district plans must give us a state plan, and similarly a combination of state plans must finally give us the national plan. Of course, I am not taking into considerations those specific areas of authority in which, for example, the center is supreme. There, of course, the center has to plan by itself. I will come to that later, but broadly that should be the pattern. Para. Having said that, I would like to say that from a purely functional point of view, and by virtue of geography and history, by virtue of the very size of our country, and by virtue of the plurality which is a gift of history, efficiency in administration and accountability are just not possible without a degree of decentralization. If the village teacher is not working, the education minister at the center cannot control. It is impossible. If a medical officer in the primary health center is not paying due attention to his job, it is only at that level that his performance can be controlled and he can be made accountable there itself. Therefore, there has to be monitoring at that level, and for that monitoring to be effective, there has to be authority vested at that level. Stop.